Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this channel. Welcome to soulishfemme. My name is Glenn of Amadang. To those of you who are tuning in for the first time, today is another devotion with me, and today's topic is about conflicts change to blessings by Mrs. Charles E. Cowman. How can we be more than conquerors? We can get out of the conflict, a spiritual discipline that will greatly strengthen our faith and establish our spiritual character. Temptation is necessary to settle and confirm us in the spiritual life. It is like the fire which burns in the colors of mineral painting, or like winds that cause the mighty cedars of the mountain to strike more deeply into the soil. Our spiritual conflicts are among our choicest blessings, and our great adversary is used to train us for his ultimate defeat. The ancient Phrygians had a legend that every time they conquered an enemy, the victor absorbed the physical strength of his victim and added so much more to his own strength and valor. It is possible, thus, not only to defeat our enemy, but to capture him and make him fight in our ranks. Just as the wise sailor can use a headwind to carry him forward by tacking and taking advantage of its impelling force, so it is possible for us in our spiritual life, through the victorious grace of God, to turn to account the things that seem most unfriendly and unfavorable, and to be able to say continually, the things that were against me have happened to the furtherance of the gospel. And the verse that comes with this is found in Romans 8:37, NIV version, that says, "In all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." So, conflicts change to blessings. Conquerors is more than just fighting with a sword, with physicality, because remember, according to Paul, we do not wrestle against blood and flesh. And it says here that our character is formed during the time of hardships, in the midst of trials, in the midst of testings and temptations and obstacles that we will face in life. And as you probably have known, you have faced in life, if you have known my story, if you have not purchased my book, which is linked down below, I have talked about the things that I've been through as a child, my teenagers, the things that I had to go through, the traumatic experiences that I had to endure. And these are the fire. These are the things that God is making us become the character to be his like Son, Jesus Christ. So our spiritual maturity is what God is after. God is not after our comfort. He's not always after our happiness. Most people think, well, you have to live your best life now, which is a part of Christianity. That is just the icing on the cake. However, in order for you to reach the potential of living the best life now and being the person that God wants you to become, he wants you to be uncomfortable. He wants you to become mature. His goal for each one of us as his follower is to make us mature in our spiritual walk. He doesn't want us to keep on drinking the same formula milk, always becoming a student but never really able to teach other people by our examples, the way we live, through our actions, because people are watching. The world, whether you like it or not, are always watching the Christians, and they always want to wonder, what is the difference between me, the worldly, the secular world, versus the Christian? What makes me want to become like them? What is it about the Christian people that I want to emulate, or I want to become like them? Because that's exactly why we have become the light city that is set upon the hill, supposedly, as a Christian. And our spiritual conflicts are among our choicest blessings and our greatest adversary. Yes, conflict, unfortunately, is part of our lives. Even if you are the most loving person in this world, trouble will find its way. There are people out there that are troubled soul. There are people out there who are still not saved. They are not willing to repent of their sins. And not because they hate you. That's why Jesus said, you will be hated of this world. If the world knows who you are and whose you are, the world will not accept you. They don't understand you. You are an alien. You are not of this world. And that's why we have conflicts, even inside our family, inside our community, sometimes, even sometimes in our relationships with other people, friendships, especially when they are not saved, they have not converted to Christianity. Of course, I'm not saying that all Christians are loving, because I have encountered that some Christians are also part of the problem. And likewise, vice versa, there are people that are not Christians, are more loving, are more peaceful than the Christians. So it's up to your, I think it's the inner working of yourself. It's the awareness of how you treat people and how you create peace instead of conflict. But as a Christian, though, our aim and our goal is to be the peacemaker. Because Jesus said, I am the prince of this world. I am the prince of peace. Jesus said, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's supposed to be liberty, there's supposed to be freedom, there's supposed to be peace, because Jesus wants us to keep the peace. Blessed are those who are peacemakers. Although conflict and struggles and disagreements will arise in the family, but as I always want to emphasize, that you must be able to let go of the grudges, let go of vindicating yourself, let God handle it, because majority of us who are hurt by people, betrayed by family members or friendships, we want to take matters into our own hands. But remember what God said. He said, I am the one who will pay and recompense you for all the wrong things that was done to you. Do not act like God. Do not take matters into your own hands, because your thoughts are not God's thoughts. Your ways are not God's ways. So if you want to take matters into your own hands, most likely you're going to regret, because it's not the wisest thing to do. So I am reminding you that in this season of holiday, you're going to come together in your family members, and there's going to be triggers, there's going to be drama, there's going to be conflict. Sometimes in the family dynamics that happens. There's no such thing as perfection, and you just have to really learn to stay grounded and centered. I know it's easier said than done, because we as a society, we like to control everybody. We like to, hopefully everyone around us is going to behave like us, have the same demeanor as us, who is more, what's the word I'm looking for, reserved and more poised and more sophisticated. But in reality, that's just not how society works. There are people in our lives that is going to trigger us, who is going to make our blood boil, who is obnoxious, who has no sense of, what do you call this? Consideration of others. They are very lack of consideration. They act as if the world revolves around them. And that's why during this holiday season, as a reminder, conflict, you can see it in a different point of view. Pray up as much as you can. When I want to visit a family members, especially when I know that we have been not in good terms with other people, we had falling off, miscommunication, misunderstanding, the things that they have said or done behind my back, and you have found that out. Sometimes you think to yourself, how can I possibly be in this midst of these people? How can I engage with them without grudges, without bitterness, without resentment? And that's why Jesus would always say, forgive those who have offended you. Forgiveness doesn't mean not remembering of what they did. Not to say that you are just going to brush it off and says, yes, I have forgiven you, but I'm not going to act like I am a stupid person and still allow you to disrespect me. This is how boundaries, this is how you have to be assertive. Because if you have found out there are people in your life that are not respectful, they have betrayed you in the past, they have gossiped about you behind your back, instead of coming to you and talking to you, that is actually so hard. Because again, being forgiving doesn't mean tolerating the sins of people. You can come into the room with people that you may not agree with. You can agree to disagree. You can still love them. And so that's why Jesus said, forgive those who have persecuted you. You have to love your enemies. If they're hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. Because as much as we want to cancel people, depending on the situation, and sometimes people would be remorseful, they feel sorry and they feel bad of what they have done, and many people are not going to come to you and apologize, maybe because of shame, or they feel guilty and they cannot live with themselves. So sometimes they probably would just deal with it with God, and that's fine. But when you are coming in contact with people that you had a conflict with, you have different kinds of opinions, especially after in this country of United States of America, after the politics and after the whatever voting system that we have, then that also can create conflict in the family. That's why some people during the election, people just don't want to talk to each other, family members, they just start hating on each other. And it's actually sad because that is a strategy. It is a tactic of the devil, is to divide and conquer. Because what did Jesus say? When a nation is divided, it cannot stand on its own. It will crumble and it's going to collapse. The same thing with a family. If it's not a family that is going to be in constant conflict, always in disagreement, there's always this animosity and hatred towards each other, then there's no harmony, there's no peace, there's no love, and there's no joy. So as a Christian, as much as we cannot really love people because of what they have done and forgive them, we can still come in contact with them, but with an open eyes, with an open mind, with the wisdom and discernment that God is going to give us. That's why I said you have to be prayerful for these people, that when God is going to say, okay, it's time for you to go back to your family and reconnect with them and rebuild relationship or reconcile, because it's up to you what it is that God is asking you, and it's up to you to obey him. And of course, there are times in our life that God would say it's not really good that you should go back to your family. These people is not trustworthy. You have done this before many times and they keep on betraying you or being disloyal to you, or they have showed you who they really are. So we just really have to be wise and be discerning of where God is leading us. Unfortunately, we cannot allow people to always tolerate the kind of nonsense that they brought upon our lives. Jesus never said to love your enemies and then tolerate their bad behavior. He never said anything about be a doormat in times of conflict. When you read the Bible and the parable of Jesus, Jesus stood his ground. He was not afraid to confront people, to put them in their place, to call them hypocrites. Even in the midst of this so-called Sadducees, high priests, so-called Pharisees, they were the leaders in his time. They had the position. And so Jesus was not afraid to say and speak because he could not tolerate their hypocrisy. So there are people in our lives that we must put them in place with love, to speak the truth in love. But even though you're speaking the truth in love, people are going to be offended. Because why? The truth hurts. And majority of people are not mature enough to accept the truth, because the truth is going to punch them in their stomach. And the truth usually is going to expose their darkness. That's why when Jesus said to the Pharisees, you are wicked, you like to give mints and cumins and offer these things at the altar, but your inside, your heart is full of wickedness. You are robbing people. Because the Pharisees was all about action. They were always about impressing people. And I, myself, has been guilty about that until God had to deal with my heart. Because God said in Samuel, I do not look at the appearance. I look at the heart. Remember what happened to Samuel when he asked Samuel to anoint the next king. He did not give Samuel a specific person to anoint. He didn't say, go to Jesse's house and anoint David. It was also a testing of Samuel the prophet to see of the kind of judgment he has to make for a person to select the next king. So I'm going to give you a synopsis of what Jesse's house, that's a David dad. So Jesse had 7 sons, I think, and David is the youngest. So Samuel was asked by God, because Saul, the king Saul, had disappointed me, he disobeyed me. I want you to go to Jesse's house, which is the David's father, and anoint the next king. So also that was something that God asked Samuel to do. However, Samuel look at Eliab, which is the oldest brother of David, and he said, surely this would be the next king in line, because he had the same stature as Saul. He is handsome, tall, he has the stature of a king, like a valiant warrior. And so that's what exactly Samuel said to himself. And so he was about to anoint Eliab, and God said, no, that is not the man I have chosen. You look at the appearance. You look at the outside stature of a man because you think that's how I judge people. But God said to Samuel, I look at the heart. Yes, people will judge us according to our looks, and that's something that we have to work on. However, God will always look at our heart condition. It is the content of our hearts. It is the motive of our hearts. It is the intention of our hearts that God is looking. God is not impressed of how tall, how beautiful, how elegant you look. You could look so elegant, but you are washed tomb on the inside. You have no character. You have no substance. You are just like what the Bible called a pig with a pearls on her neck. Okay, a woman with no discretion. She has no wisdom. She is like a pig wearing a lipstick. Isn't it sad? But it's the truth. The Bible calls people that have no discretion, they have no decorum, they have no character as a pig. Because what does the pig know? They're just going to roll around the mud. They don't care whether they become filthy because they're pigs, they're swine. In the same manner, with God, you could be dressing up the most branded names and you could have all the money in the world, but if you have no substance of character, if you have no good conscience in you, you're nothing in God's eyes but a swine. There it is. I just said it. So it's not to insult you, but it is how God sees our sin. It is God sees our heart. And so what happens to David, of course, when Samuel was reprimanded by God saying, that is not the man I'm looking for, God said, there's another man, David, who is the youngest, who was overlooked of all his siblings. And God said, there's another boy who is a shepherd who is going to be the king in line. So my point is that in the times of reconciliation with your family, in times of reconnecting with people in your life, when you had conflict and falling apart and falling off in your relationship, we could turn it into a blessing. We could turn it into something that we could probably help build a relationship together according to God's will and purposes. Now, there are situations that God would say you can forgive them, but then it's not that you have to rebuild relationship, because what happened to Isaac and Esau? So, not Isaac. It was Jacob. Yeah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it was something that Esau, that had a twin brother, Esau and Jacob. Jacob took something from Esau, his birthright, and then after that, Jacob also took away the blessings from his dad. So they also had a conflict with a brother to a brother. Eventually, when they're older enough, Jacob realized what he has done, so he had to meet up his brother Esau, and he asked for forgiveness. But after that, they just departed from each other. They lived their own lives. And that is also something that God would even tell us, that we can love people from afar. So that's a reminder, the conflict that we can change to blessing. It says here that it is possible thus not only to defeat our enemy, but to capture him and make him fight in our ranks, just as the wise sailor can use a head. So as I said, it's about your perspective. It is how you change your circumstances into something that could be a blessing, that could bless other people. I know it's very hard to reconnect with people in your life, especially when the damage is done, even if they have betrayed you. This is why the Bible is clear. When Peter asked Jesus, how many times should we forgive someone? He said 7 times 7. It's 70 times 7, which is 490. And that's how much we should forgive other people, because Jesus understood that offense is part of life. You will be offended as long as you're living, breathing, and existing in this world. There are people around us, strangers, friends, family members, spouses, children. They will offend us. They will disrespect us. They will going to say something that can trigger us, or do something that makes us want to just snap at them, because it's just part of life. So this is why when we are in this midst of transitioning from 2024 to 2025, one of the things that I've been asking God to help me to regain my composure, regain my centered, because so many people today are they're not centered. We are living in the world where the anxiety is really at the fullest level. I feel like people now are more anxious than ever before. I can sense it in my family. I can sense this in the people that I sometimes come in contact with. They're very anxious, because they have not taken the time to center themselves, to slow down, to take care of themselves, to listen to themselves, and to really connect with the Creator. As Jesus say, apart from me, you can do nothing. Jesus is the vine, we are the branches. And I feel like when people are anxious, they're constantly anxious, trying to impress people. They don't know how to deal with conflict. And I was being observant. So when I visited one of these places with someone, and I just somehow observed and the communication and how the dialogue and the exchange of conversation took place, and I was just an observer watching the two people, talking to each other. And I realized one thing: people are anxious. When we're anxious, we tend to talk fast, we tend to talk more, we are not capable of pausing, taking the time, getting centered, and try to frame our words that comes out of our mouth, because we just like to blurt something out of our mouth. But the question is asked, you cannot possibly answer correctly because you are too focused of trying to impress people. And that is coming from anxiety. That comes from the lack of awareness of yourself. But if you are a person who is self-aware, you try to not to rush to things. And sometimes I do the same thing. I mumble through the words because I'm trying to get things done, or I'm trying to get out of the conversation, or you're nervous because you're always thinking to yourself, am I saying the right words? Am I, do I look foolish? Do I sound foolish? We're always self-centered. We're always thinking about me, myself, and I. But if you're looking outside and really engaging with the person and really just asking them questions, then it's more like a reciprocal conversation. So in this past few days, if you have not watched some of my vlogs, I have been to different places, and I just stumbled upon this beautiful places of meeting people. I don't know where God is leading me, but I've been just going to, business owners, or a business that is tucked somewhere, that is hidden. And somehow I talk to the owners. I talk to people who are creating something. Like, I'm not sure if you have watched recently about the man who owns this pasta lab with his wife and another person that's coming up for my next video. You should watch it. An owner that is based, mother and sons, who have created this Mexican restaurant in downtown Las Vegas. So you just really have to understand that when you are conversing with other people, it's not because you want to create a conflict or tension. It's about uniting people. It's about finding a common ground. It's finding about the commonality of the things that you like. And I think that food is a universal language. Music is a universal language. Communication is a universal language, although communication can create conflict if you're not careful of how you deliver your message. So sometimes in our world, we can find commonality by talking about food, the things that you like. And usually food is something that I like to talk about, or something that my husband and I have something in common, we like to eat, or to venture into a place where we can really try local restaurants or local coffee shop. That is the universal language of the world, which is that brings us together. So sometimes you just have to find a place that can bring people together. That's why when you have a holiday season, food usually, hopefully, brings people together. They talk about things that hopefully not going to trigger other people. A place where you can engage in a happy conversation. Although we cannot, as I said, avoid conflict. Conflict is going to be inevitable sometimes. It's going to be part of the conversation, because some people might be more sensitive about the area, and maybe you just avoid of that. And that's why self-awareness comes in, because not everybody is going to agree with you. Depending on the family dynamics, of course, there are families that are open-minded, that whatever discussion comes, they don't see it as a threat, or they don't see it as a big of a deal, because some people will turn this molehill into a big mountaintop. So that's something that you have to be very aware, and you have to know, is this appropriate to discuss things on the table during the holidays? Because as I said, there are family members that are sensitive, that you have to be more keen to their sensitivity. You have to avoid things that can trigger them. That is something that they have to work on. Because as I said, if this is not about the people who said it or how they said it, it's about you being triggered. If you have not worked in yourself, and this is exactly what anxious people do. If you have not done the inner work, you are not aware of yourself, what triggers you, why am I pissed off? You have not dealt with the root cause of it. It's because you are still in denial. You have not tell the truth. You have not really acknowledged that you have an anxiety problem. You have a problem with anger, and that comes with maturity. It comes with a territory. Sometimes people might think like, well, nothing's wrong with me. But when you listen to them, when they talk, they're very all over the place. They are not composed. You can feel this presence of anxiety. If you just learn to ground yourself and observe people, most people today are anxious because of unresolved issues from their past, unresolved issues within themselves, and unresolved issues since they were a child into the adolescence. And as I said on my channel, I want you to prosper in body, spirit, and soul. That is my goal on my channel. I just want to talk about how to heal and how to do this, but also give you the practical advice of how you can live your life, not just talking, because I said talk is cheap, but I want you to execute and to have a plan of how you live your life. This video is getting lengthy. I have to go. And so that is all that I want you to think about today, is that conflict can change into blessing. It can change into reconciliation. Conflict can change into building a more longevity relationship that is sustainable, I think, or it can be, you can grow closer, or maybe conflict can turn into something that is going to make you grow deeply in love with someone. And sometimes conflict is also, we can learn from each other. Sometimes we are in conflict because we actually probably see things differently. And conflict is not something that we should take as a problem. Conflict is a question whether or not, how can we find the commonality, the common ground? How can we agree to disagree, even if we're still living in the same house or living in the same environment? But how can we have a common ground? And you just have to find that out for yourself. As I said, food, music, things that really matters the most, which is, of course, everybody wants to be protected, to be loved, to be accepted, to be heard of, to be acknowledged, to feel like they belong to someone or to some kind of a group. And I think wherever you come from and the kind of color in your skin, that is something that we can agree on. It's nothing to do about how much money you have in the bank. It's all about these being welcoming to people that doesn't look like you, welcoming to people and being able to listen to their needs. And if you are not just self-absorbed, always thinking about yourself and always like, what do I get out of this? Then the world is your oyster. If you really know how to talk to people and to engage with them without a hidden agenda or motive, I think everybody will have less conflict, because your goal is not to get something from people or to impress people, but your goal is genuine connection and being authentic. And I think that's what's lacking in this world today. And I just want to remind you that if you go back to your family members this holiday season, remind yourself that it's just not about you. It's not about your agenda. It's really about having a genuine connection, memorable moments with your family, because as I said, life is too short. We're never guaranteed of tomorrow. Maybe I'll be here today, but you don't know what tomorrow may bring. Maybe one of your family members, it's just life could happen instantaneously. And that is something that I really have to be mindful of. Just, Lord, help me to let go of bitterness, let go of anger, let go of unforgiveness that I have towards people, and just really build relationship if that person is really worth building relationship. As I said, you have to ask God for guidance. Give me wisdom, Lord. Is it time for me to rebuild relationship with people? Is it time for me to reconnect with them or not? So that's why conflict do arise. Conflict, as I said, is something that is unavoidable, but it's something that you can turn it into something, a blessing, and something that God is going to be able to rebuild your relationship that's broken. Because remember, Jesus is a God of restoration. He is a God who builds broken marriages, broken relationships, broken lives, because Jesus said, I am the what? The Messiah, the Savior of the world. And Jesus said that He is the light of the world. He is not the darkness. He stepped into this world so that there'll be light, and that light is going to be shine throughout the world that is full of darkness. And that is the job as a Christian, that wherever we go, we bring out this light through us because of Jesus Christ, that it is illuminating from how we talk or deal with people, even in the difficulties. That's why Jesus would always say, I am your guiding. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And apart from me, you cannot bear fruit of love, peace, joy, and suffering, long suffering rather. And that is why I want you to be reminded that conflict is inevitable, but at the same time, when God is in your midst and He is working with you through these hardships in your life, all things are possible. I hope you have learned from this video. I have to go. Be blessed, be bold, be courageous, and keep your faith.